Well, hello and welcome to Faith, Philosophy and Life with me, Mr. Shelton. It's great to see you, and I hope you are doing as well as usual. So today we are carrying on with our good and evil topic, and we're going to be thinking a little bit about conscience today. So I just wondered, before we look at that anymore, what would you think the point of human life is? And how do you make decisions? Have a think about those while you go and grab your pen and paper, because here's our cheesy intro sequence. Okay, so our title today is Should Our Conscience Always Be Our Guide? Should our conscience, I think of the Disney song, and always let your conscience be your guide. Anyway, there you go. So, I can't believe I just did that. So we're going to examine how conscience and natural law can help people to choose right from wrong. Remember to pause me as usual, and then send everything to your teachers at the end of today's session, please. So it's going to be a good outcome if we can say what conscience is and how natural law could guide people. Great if you can talk about how you can evaluate these viewpoints, and even better if we can compare those views to ones that we've learned previously. So we're going to look at life. I need to confess something to you today. Natural moral law, some situations, and then an exam question to end with. So let's just start with these key terms. As always, write down the ones that you don't know. The ones that you do know, don't bother writing down because you already know them. So conscience then is the inner voice of what's right and wrong. Natural law is the idea that nature can teach us about moral truths. So we look at nature, and then we can find out what we should do. I wonder if you've ever done something that you feel really bad about, really guilty about. There was one point I was doing a barbecue. I was much younger, for my sister. And let's just say one of her friends was vegetarian, and one of her friends wasn't being very nice to me. My sister's a little bit older than me. So let's just say said friend didn't end up with a vegetarian burger. She said it was the nicest vegetarian burger she'd ever eaten, and I just bit my tongue. And I've confessed it now, so I do feel a lot better. But I wonder if confession really does help you feel less guilty. Because when we're thinking about the topic of conscience, maybe it does. Because maybe our conscience becomes clearer when we maybe take our eyes off what we're actually worried about. So for Aquinas, the purpose of human life is to achieve perfection with God. For humans are made in the image of God, and that means seeking union with God. So Aquinas is a key person to be aware of. Remember, when we're talking about our topics in our exams, we've got to quote source of wisdom or authority, and Aquinas will be a person to do that. You see, almost everyone has the experience of a conscience. I think that's fair to say. And the catechism is really important here. Okay, the catechism of the Catholic Church says, deep within the conscience, man discovers a law which he is not laid upon himself, but he must obey. It's a voice calling him to love and to do what is good and to avoid evil. So I think it'd be really important to make a note of that in your book. So this concept that our conscience is a voice which calls us to love and to do good and avoid evil. So just get that down. Pause me if you need to, because I'm about to move on. So in the Catholic tradition, here's some more things for you to make a note of. Everyone has a duty to inform their conscience, be the best that you can. A conscience is innate, it's with you from when you were born, and humans have the ability to reason. So there's lots of different ways where people might think conscience comes from. Some say it comes from your parents, some says it comes from role models, and some says it comes from society. And we know what to do because society teaches us right from wrong. Maybe pause me now while you get down which one you think best explains where conscience comes from, and say why. So which one of these three best explains where conscience comes from? So it's an A question, explain what's meant by conscience. It's worth 2 marks, therefore you know to explain an example. But before we answer that, let's just watch this.
The impression of most is that the conscience is very much like Disney's Jiminy Cricket, something that comes to us from without and that we can very much shoo away if it becomes too much of a bother. Or others see conscience rather like the devil and angel sitting on one's shoulders. And while this image may at first have come into existence to reveal the nature in which both the devil and our guardian angel fight for influence over our lives, it has become rather the more popular image of a conscience hard at work. Both these images, however, miss the fact that the conscience is not merely something that exists outside of us, to approach in the same way and guise and potency regardless of our inner state. No, what is apprehended, what is placed before you for your consideration, the clarity of Jiminy's voice or the nasty suggestions of a little one dressed up in red and residing on your shoulder, all of this changes depending very much on you. This is why it is usually more helpful to think of the conscience as a fist that your soul makes, or if you like, the conscience is like a muscle that you flex. You see, this is a much better image because we can all imagine a hand that does not become the fist, or the muscle that does not flex. It doesn't mean that it couldn't do this. It just means that when that muscle we call a soul flexes, we know it is for a particular purpose. And the purpose for which a soul flexes is to choose what is good and avoid evil. But of course, you have to choose it. It is just as that old couplet says, which is sometimes attributed to Lord Byron, "He who is convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." Or if you prefer something earlier, consider the medieval phrase "alteri incommunicabilis," which essentially means that there's something that is non-transferable about every soul. Or again, as philosopher Karl Wojtyła once explained the phrase, "No one can want for me." You have to choose what you think is good, no matter what, whether you are objectively wrong or not. And that's scary, isn't it? Because it means that if the muscles of your soul have not been choosing the good for a while, if their workout has been inconsistent or just non-existent, then your ability to pick up the weight of truth and goodness become hindered greatly. Not only because doing the good is harder than it would have been if you had practiced, but because our lack of practice has affected our perception. We can no longer see what is right in front of us. Jiminy is not green suddenly, but blue. And that devil on the shoulder is no longer red, but wearing pajamas and has a bag of popcorn in his hand. And I don't know what that means either, I'm sorry. So while the unpracticed soul still flexes to apprehend the good, it might actually miss its mark entirely, calling what is evil its opposite and vice versa. So when this happens, a person might just end up agreeing with all his will only to come to the wrong opinion still. What then is conscience? It is the process by which you apprehend what is true and good so that you can choose goodness, avoid what is evil, and maintain a healthy soul. So keep those muscles strong and keep flexing. Something to think about.
Okay, so let's have a go at that A question now. It's 2 marks, 2 minutes. Explain what's meant by conscience. Come back to me in 2 minutes. So we said our learning objective is to examine how conscience and natural law can help people demonstrate right and choose right from wrong. Now we have talked about conscience a lot. We now need to focus on natural law. So natural law come up with by St. Thomas Aquinas. And he says it's based around the idea that humans can do good and avoid evil. And there's 5 sort of precepts, 5 things that humans can do. They break into 2 categories. The first one is common to all creatures and the second one is special to humans. So what I'd like you to do is to write those down and then have a think. Let me move there. And then have a think about, do you agree with these or do you think there's anything missing? So get written down what the 5 precepts are. They're the blue ones underneath the do you agree, and then explain, do you agree, do you think they're good precepts or not, and do you think it's missing anything? So this is about the purpose of humanity. Okay, so do we think that these are the purpose of humanity or not, and why? So pause me now, get that done, and then come back to me. Okay, so these are the 5 precepts again. And what I've got here from number 1 to number 8 are examples of when these precepts might come into play. So look at between 1 and 8 and work out which of those primary precepts would it fit. So for example, have an abortion. Well, that's going to be against precept number 1 and number 2. So which is number 2, for example? Staying in bed Sunday morning. Which precept number is that? And work through those and see if you can identify what they are. Make sure you pause me. Okay, so number 2 would be to worship God. Number 3 would be to reproduce. Number 4 would be to reproduce or live in an ordered society. Number 5 would be to live in an ordered society. Number 6 would be to reproduce. Number 7 would be to live in an ordered society. Number 3, and probably number 1 as well. And number 8 is the last one, educate the young. So what we're now going to do is I just want to really focus on the arguments for and against the strengths and weaknesses of natural moral law. In the description below you will see a little table that you can get off and print off, or you can write them out if you'd rather. And I'd like you to identify which ones support natural law and which ones do you disagree with that goes against natural law. So which ones are for natural law and which ones are against natural law. And then finally write an A next to the arguments you personally agree with and a D next to the arguments that you disagree with. So give that a go and then come back to me. This is going to take you 10 minutes or so. So this is a little graphic that I came across. This wasn't enough, so then I gave you conscience. I came in human form and sent you lots of prophets, good men and women, and the church to help you get it right. Because I love you, I created you Imago Dei and gave you natural law to help you do good and avoid evil. Just a few little phrases there that I came across. But I like this idea that God's put everything in our place in order to know what right from wrong is, and so our conscience can help us, and so can the teaching of the church. So the last thing then we're going to do is a D question. So this is a farmy question, for, against, rebuttal, my opinion, if everyone. And the question is this: natural law is the best source of moral authority. Natural law is the best source of moral authority for Catholics. So basically you'll need to compare it to conscience, and then you need to think about the Bible and all the other work that we've done in other units. It's going to take you 15 minutes, so I'm going to leave it there today. Thanks for your time. Let's get this done, obviously, and get that sent through to your teacher. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, wash your hands, God bless you, and I'll be seeing you soon.